one of our committees today. My name is Ross Hanley, and I'm the chairman of the Constitutional Governance Committee, and to my right is early vice chairman of the committee. Welcome members of the public, particularly here today, and also particularly those who might be joining us via the webcast on Microsoft Teams. And we have a team of committee members here with us today, and all the key officers are physically present in the council chamber here, or the council chamber in the lateral here at other elected members of the public may physically or remotely meet and you have the right to participate in the discussion of your members of the council or on Microsoft Teams. So you can remain that time to be on Teams. Richard, to share meeting, also keep an eye on Teams as well. The meeting has been webcast and members available on the website members. When you're invited to please be in some microphone, the benefits man might be joining us. You might know who each of those are. But the benefit of you listening to identify who is speaking. And also find everybody else is also being audio recorded. Honestly, I tiny across the page that was put together with all present in file information. Item number 1 of the agenda today is apologies for absence and also substitutions. I've been notified for Councillor Butt Philip has given his substitute his apologies, and he's been subbed by Councillor.
We put it down to 3 and 2.
The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, which were held on the 9th of December at Dean House. Can we confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting held on that date? I have agreed the chair to sign the minutes of the correct record of what was said. That's proposed by Councillor Curley, seconded by Dawn. You just got that. Okay, texting it. All those in favour of the minutes? Both members of the public who submitted questions are in the room. And the first question is from David Orr. Oh, sorry, Richard. The 3 declarations of interest. Members will be invited to declare any interest regarding any matters on the agenda and to specify the nature of that interest, and obviously highlighting the meetings, the standard declarations of panel members in relation to their membership of town and parish councils, which are already published on our website. Councillor Stanton, then Councillor Wilkins.
Oh, didn't press the button. Sorry, Mike Stanton. Yeah, I'm along with Richard. Declaring an interest as the councillor representing the Curraghy Bridle and Langport division, which affects the merger issue over Langport and Hewish Episcopi.
Absolutely, I represent the same constituent division, so that's I think item number 5 on the list.
You've demonstrated an interest.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, it isn't actually on this item. It was the apologies for absence section. Councillor Osborne isn't able to attend in person because she has a planning briefing that takes place later on in the afternoon. She didn't think she could get back in time for it, but she is attending online and she wanted that to be made clear. So she is in attendance, but unfortunately not able to be here in person.
Councillor Osborne is very diligent about attending these meetings. Even if she can't attend, she often attends online. I can remember one meeting, I think we were in Yeovil a year or so ago. She even took the trouble to log on from a lay-by, she told us all. So she's very diligent. Thank you. She said, welcome, Sue. But 4 is public question time. So we have 2 submissions from members of the public. Both participants are in the room. David Orr, welcome to you.
Yes, pleasure to be back under your chairmanship, Councillor Henley. Before I start, just to say that I was asked to come here by the audit chair, Councillor Hewitson, on this matter. Right, I'll start. Oh, right.
Stop the clock and allow Dave to start again.
Right, shall I start, Chair? I have genuine concerns about the way confidential sessions are being used to take items of high public interest into secret sessions, barring the press and public. I am concerned that current status quo has been inherited from the old county council without a review and updating policy to modern standards of openness and transparency. The new council states that it prides itself on being open, transparent and accessible, yet there appears to me to be a high use of confidential session. The public interest tests as to why it's confidential aren't published, and non-confidential public interest information, such as a summary of the issue or totals, isn't published as a public paper. Our generic pro forma is being used routinely without being specific to the confidential item. I won't read the next bit, but Andrew Lee, formerly of the Lever, now Somerset Confidential, was trying to get some high-level non-commercial details about procurement waivers and breaches, and he couldn't get them. And I had similar issues, which is why Councillor Hewitson sent me here, over trying to actually understand, when we're disposing of investment assets, what the residual debt is, what the losses are and stuff like that. So what I want to do here is, you've got an item 7, this is supposed to be related to, which is your forward workload. And I'm asking this committee if you'd mind adding this at some stage. Will the Constitution and Governance Committee urgently address this constitutional matter by reviewing the use of confidential work sessions in the work programme in the next quarter, if possible? Big ask. A, review the confidential session policy with a remit to be as open and transparent as possible with best practice values. B, mandate that a specific public interest test is carried out each time an item is taken into a confidential session. C, mandate that the specific public interest test is to be published against the item being taken into confidential session. And D, mandate the publishing of a public summary paper about the issue and include non-confidential information such as a summary of the issue, risks and threats, numeric totals if applicable, etc. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dave. And stop in the room to try and pick, go to try and pick this up and give some kind of sort of in the room a verbal answer to Dave. Thanks for the question, Dave, obviously, and thank you. Nice to see you again and in the room. So, as part of the regular consideration of the Council's decision-making and governance processes and procedures, the Monitoring Office, the Head of Democratic Services, have commenced a review, and we would like to reassure you that points have been raised and will be considered. Scott, do you want to add anything to that?
Only to add that clearly we do an annual review as part of reviewing the Constitution, which will include things such as our public participation and access to information rules. So again, we will be looking at all the points that both Mr. Orr and others have made in terms of both openness and transparency, and looking at areas in which we may need to improve.
Thank you, Chair. If I could have a written answer and some idea of when that might be so I can attend again, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dave. Nice to see you. Second question is from, got jointly with Sean. Please apologise if I can pronounce this wrong. Ron Gould.
Yep.
Ron Gould, excellent. And Julia Gadd.
Yep.
Thank you. And you have 3 minutes each.
That's perfect. Thank you. So I'm the chair of Langport Town Council. Julia is the chair of Huish Episcopi Parish Council. We appear today in support of the motions passed by each of our councils that our 2 parishes should be merged. On passing these motions, we met with Stephen and his team, and according to the 2007 revised 2015 Local Governments Act, we were told that we would need a supporting petition from each of our parishes. These have been completed and handed in to Jonathan, and we understand that this matter is now before you as a body. Why are we asking you to do this? What is it about the current balance of our 2 parishes that requires such an ambitious adaptation? The first reason is topological. We were going to have a map up, and there is the map. If you look in the middle, you'll see the little green bit that is Langport. Half of that is moorland. The other bit is all Cheersley. If you look in the middle, you'll see a green bit, which is half moorland, half all built up Langport. The huge red bit that completely surrounds it, other than the moorland, is Hewish Episcopi. When you remember the fourth side is wetland and unsuitable for building, you can see the problem. Langport has no scope for expansion in that it is fully developed. All Langport's land has already been used. Hewish has 9 times as much land, much of which is rapidly being developed. The population of Hewish has trebled since the 70s to over 2,600, whereas Langport population has stayed flat at about 1,000. Almost everything that the Hewish Episcopi and Langport community shares is in Langport. So the shops, the markets, the doctor's surgery, the pharmacist, the dental practices, the youth clubs, etc. So while Hewish has expanded and continues to expand, it is Langport town that must continually expand its provisions, with no expansion as to its rateable pace. As a result, to keep up with the ever-increasing demands caused by Hewish's expansion, Langport has had to raise its precept to improbably high levels. Langport's precept is currently more than 3 times that of Hewish's. Hewish has raised its precept a little, but the overall income has increased a great deal because of the increasing number of houses. Given that all the resources are shared, the imbalance between the available precept resources of each council and the facilities they support is an ever-growing problem, a problem that is best resolved by our becoming a single council for the whole area. I'm going to hand over to Julia to use our other 3 minutes.
The second issue is complexity, unnecessary complexity. To address the imbalance that Sean has been talking about, Hewish does support certain Langport-based activities, the youth club, the recreation ground, the cricket club. Both councils have jointly administered S106 money. We have a joint committee and various subcommittees to resolve joint issues like parking and entertainment resources. However, this requires an arcane structure by which any joint committees then must refer their recommendations back to both councils for ratification. If those councils wish to amend, we then must go round the loop again. We get through it and the work gets done, but it is bizarrely elaborate compared to the simple solution of a single council for our area. The third reason is the efficiency and resulting cost savings. A single council would necessarily mean economies of scale in terms of administration resources and streamlined decision making. It's worth doing now because we have significant issues arising in the short term in our joint area. We must find another 100 parking spaces. We are to become Somerset's first rural transport hub. We are the nexus for 2 new active travel routes. We must find a strategy for our beautiful historic buildings, all of which are in Langport. In 2032, our listed town hall will have housed the town council for 300 years without a break, but it must be restored and improved if this terrific run is to continue. Subject to conversion of an existing pilot scheme, we will be the jumping off point for an incredible new 5,000 hectare wetland reserve to the west of us. These opportunities we can best resolve as a single council acting with one voice. Really your business. However, we have proceeded on the basis that some form of plebiscite will form part of the process, and we would hope that this is possible. We look forward to assisting you with further consultation and very much hope that this review will be completed in time to get structures in place for the May 2027 parish elections. It will no doubt be part of your considerations. Then you look at the form of a possible new council. We wish to recommend a single unwarded council of 11 elected members called Hewish Episcopi and Langport Town Council that will sit in Langport Town Hall. Our thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia and Sean. Thank you very much for explaining the background to the petition. I've been briefed on it beforehand. I'm aware of the petition, but it's really interesting, actually. The issues faced by your town council in Langport and Hewish Episcopi Parish Council in working together. First priority for this council, Somerset Council, to determine the terms of reference and timetable for undertaking this review. This will be followed by a consultation with relevant stakeholders and the public to obtain and express their views before the matter returns to this committee to consider a course of action. It's also helpful you put forward the view that any new parish council should be unwarded with 11 elected members, and it should be called Hewish Episcopi and Langport Town Council. Regarding this latter point, if those that council decide to abolish the 2 existing councils and create a brand new council, as suggested in the petition, it would have to be a parish council which could subsequently resolve to designate itself a town council. And again, thank you very much for bringing this matter to the committee, and it's obviously very relevant to an item which is, in fact, the next item which is on the agenda. I know that probably Councillor Wilkins and Councillor Stanton will be really interested in it. Are you quite happy to wait and to talk until we actually get to the agenda item, both of you? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So we're moving swiftly on to item number 5, which is the community governance review, which is very pertinent to the question we just had for Hewish, Episcopi and Langport. And I'm going to invite Stephen Lake, our head of electoral management, to introduce the board in the agenda pack. Stephen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 17. I think you've had a lot of background already to the proposal. Both parishes have there have been the requisite number of electors from each of the parishes to request a community governance review. Therefore, the council has no option but to undertake one. So what we're doing now is looking at the first stage of the review, which is to determine the terms of reference and a timetable. At this stage, that is all. So I will be, I don't really have to, but I will be consulting with the divisional members, both of whom are here anyway, the MP, probably the head teacher at the school, etc., so that it's widely known within the 2 parishes that this is going on. We will obviously also put information on the website, and I'm assuming the 2 parish councils will also be putting information around locally. So really all I'm asking you at the moment is to look at the terms of reference and the timetable and hopefully approve it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm going to open this up to the members themselves, or the members of the committee. I'm going to ask the 2 ward division members if they'd like to go first. I'm picking that up there, the vibe that Richard, you won that battle, or not a battle, you're going to go and speak first, are you? And I'll call Mike to speak afterwards.
Yeah, obviously, both Sean and Julia have really spoken quite eloquently of the issues around the 2 separate parishes, town council, and it is quite clear to the vast majority of people that the only sensible solution is a merger. And I think that the way forward has been clearly laid out by Stephen, and we should proceed with all haste, and let's get this done sooner rather than later is my opinion. Obviously there's a process to go through, and I'm sure that with the help of both councils that the process will be fairly smooth. And I'll pass over to my division.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton, do you want to follow Richard there?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is long overdue. There was had it about 15 or 16 years ago, which didn't happen because there was a referendum which voted against it, as I understand it. We, Richard and I, have been following this for the last 3 years. Congratulations really to both parish councils for getting organised and getting their act together, because not everybody in the parish, particularly Hewish, actually wants this. So there will be some opposition and some feedback, which we'll hear. I've been under the impression that there had to be a referendum, but I noticed that's not in the timetable, but it's determined under delegated powers by this committee. If you could just confirm that, I mean, I think that's great. I'm not particularly in favour of referenda, not enough people vote, but that would just be useful to know.
I can answer, Chair, there doesn't have to be a referendum. And in theory, because of how you can use a register of electors, we can't actually carry out one. However, they could have parish meetings in both of the local authorities, i.e. Langport and Hewish Episcopi, and at those meetings, parish polls could be requested. And I think that would give the right way to deal with it. And I can explain what parish polls are, either inside this meeting or outside. But no, we wouldn't ordinarily have a referendum.
Dawn Johnson.
Thank you. It does sound like you have the support required to take this forward. I'm slightly confused why there would have been a referendum required previously and not required now. And also that presumably when it was done 15 years ago, which was a long time ago, there would have been the numbers then to bring it forward, but then the public voted against it. So I'm slightly surprised that happened. If you get the support to bring it forward, why then a referendum goes against that proposed supported idea? Just trying to understand a bit more what happened previously, what the differences are between what happened then and what's happening now.
Like to answer Councillor Johnson's query.
The legislation for community governance reviews didn't come into effect until 2010. So before that, I'm not going to say it's the Wild West, but there were no rules in effect in place.
So I guess my concern is just being absolutely sure that if we're not having a referendum this time, that it will be the public desire that comes through rather than some people who are more vocal coming through. I'm just wanting reassurance that you will capture the views of the entire population of that area.
Richard, I think you've probably got more local knowledge about this.
Yeah, this has already taken place, Dawn. There was I've forgotten the name of it, but a community survey that took place, and I believe that showed that over 80% of the population, and very similar figures for both Hewish Episcopi and Langport, were in favour of the merger. This is why it's come to this point. So I believe that sort of level of and that survey I believe was hand delivered to every, was that right? It was hand delivered to every single person in both parishes, town area. So I believe that's already taken place. I think would be a fair one, and an awful lot happens in 15 years. I think would be fair to say.
It's really helpful for take that. Martin Wales.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm probably the only one in the room who was around on South Somerset Council when this was done. I have a feeling it was after 2010, to be frank with you. I can't remember when it was, but I think it was it not
2009.
Well, there we go. Anyway, it was as it's been said already. It was I believe, quite roundly defeated at that time in some form of public referendum or survey. Well, it was turned down anyway by South Somerset District Council, and I'm glad to see it back again, because I have to say, even at that time, my memory seemed to serve me that it should have been done then, and can't really remember why it wasn't, to be honest. But it was not approved by South Somerset District Council at the time, but I would like to see it go ahead now. Only thing that worries me is who carries the cost, Chairman? Is it this council? And was it South Somerset on that occasion? And I think it was, in fact.
Good question. Stephen, are you able to answer?
What costs are we talking about?
Cost of it, if there is any, yeah, and the cost of the whole process.
This council would bear the cost of the process. The two parishes would bear all the costs that relate to their merging.
David.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions through you, sir. Can I too? Thank you. Please, I know Langport well. I was a news agent and I dealt with people in Langport, so I know that. Couple of questions is, as one side is far more populated, the breakdown in who's in charge, etc. So you're going to have 11 people, aren't you?
Just is everybody happy just to informally suspend standing orders, just so you know, think Sean and Julie be able to add some colour to this, and it'd be bizarre if they had the information and we were sat here and not getting the answer. Is that okay? Thank you, Sean. Do you like?
I really appreciate that, Chair. Thank you very much. It will be a new council, sir, so it'll be elected by everyone there. Now, currently the population is 3 times as large in Hewish Episcopi as it is in Langport. So one would assume that that would be democratically represented in the way that the new council is elected. The plan is to elect it at the same time as all the other parishes being elected in 2027 in Somerset. So it will be new. We don't know who's going to be on it because that's for the electorate and us, but we assume it will be representative of the whole area.
Chair, and the other question, please. Who overall will be in charge then? Because you are a town at the moment in Langport. So you're going to throw your identity away? Will you be parishes or will it be one town?
The route that Stephen suggested, which is in order to be merged, we will have to be temporarily a parish, but we may then later become a town. That is a route that has appealed to us. Again, it'll be up to the new council to decide whether they pursue that. We, if we want to do the merger, have to be a parish to begin with, but we will then apply or try to become a town as soon as that's feasible.
Information. Mike, do you want to come back?
Just to clarify, Chair, as I understand it, the powers of a town council and a parish council are exactly the same, aren't they? So it's just a label.
The only difference is we can't have a mayor, Mike. That's the only difference between a town and a parish.
I wouldn't ask you to declare an interest, either of you, on that.
Got it.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to give the perspective of the neighbours. So I'm the division member for Somerton. This has been something that we've been aware of next door for quite a long time. It appears eminently sensible to me, as it did 15 years ago. The one thing I'd say is, of course, being the rival town, I'm not too sure I want to give it any more power, but I think we probably have to get over that. But yeah, I would heartily recommend this. I just think, just to add a little bit of colour to some of the argument about why it was rejected last time. I think the crux of the issue was then, and I think it's changed a little bit since then, is Langport effectively was providing all the services that Hewish was using, and they weren't paying for it. Well, in any referendum, if you're getting a free service, people often quite happy with that, and I think that was one of the drivers why it was turned down. So I'm glad that we're approaching it in a slightly different method. That 100% has my support. Thank you, Chair.
I go to Langport quite a bit, actually, because I'm a director of the national charity BIBIC, which is based, I think, in Langport, but actually they're beyond the Hewish Episcopi sign. So I do know Langport quite a bit. It's quite a bit, the urban bit of Langport doesn't end before you hit the Huish Episcopi side, isn't it? If you're going around towards Somerton. So my very limited knowledge of the area, I can see, how very closely your communities sort of linked together. Mike.
Yeah, just to highlight the absurdity, when I was canvassing, I visited a set of bungalows who were delighted to explain that if I stood in their front garden, I was in Langport, but in their back garden, I was in Huish Episcopi.
Yeah, I've just turned up South Somerset District Council's notice for the 13th of September 2010, when the following questionnaire had to be returned to South Somerset District Council. So there we are. And it looks very like the notes on the notice, the council notice look just like our minutes today, agenda today, Chairman. So there we are. Time goes by quickly, doesn't it?
Particularly when you're having fun. Okay, any other members? It's been actually quite interesting actually to see that. I think eminently sensible to look at these sort of issues. Yeah, is there a precedent for this? This gets us to happen in Somerset before. An example, or that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is very sensible, and I'm sure long overdue. And speaking as somebody who did it from time to time from the other end of the county, it's always struck me as being very odd, the division between Huish Episcopi and Langport. A useful precedent for the merger of Watford and Willerton in due course. And I would also observe that nomenclature is very important, and for it to be Huish Episcopi and Langport in this era of acronyms, so that it is HEAL, is going to be absolutely vital, because if that "and" is missed out and it's just Huish Episcopi Langport, coming from Pell, I doubt will be so beneficial.
I'm really technical now. I remember being told by a very well-experienced county councillor who was on the county council for years. He said he once attended a parish council meeting in a village that he represented, and he said that he listened to a debate for 1 hour and 45 minutes. And he counted to decide whether the parish council wished to actually have the apostrophe removed from the name of the village on the red village style. These are very, very technical, but very important, though, aren't they? Okay, thanks. Any other members wish to comment? In that case, then I move to the recommendation, which is we have considered the report, and hopefully I'm going to propose that we approve the terms of reference to the community governance review of Huish Episcopi and Langport. Right. All those in favour, members? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. That's good. Item number 6, the LGBCE electoral review, the consultation extension and next steps. Just to give a little bit of local colour to this, you will be aware we just discussed this and debated this at great length at our last meeting over at Dean House. One of the things that we decided not to accept the report of the working party and submit that as Somerset Council's submission to the boundary review, the LGBC boundary review of Somerset for the elections of May 27. We put a little caveat on that, asking if it was at all possible for the LGBC to allow us any extra time to draw together a submission which could gain cross-party support. We could submit it to the council permission. We heard back rather quickly from the LGBC, and I quote the response which was given the LGBC: "How long do you want?" I think it was that basic, wasn't it? And after a bit of discussion, we've unprecedentedly been granted another 6 weeks to do that. We are obviously 2 or 3 weeks into those 6 weeks, but the work has already taken place. A meeting took place with group leaders and myself and Councillor Curley as Vice Chair to discuss the way forward. And it was decided that group officers are going to work up some proposals on this. They're going to draw it together with myself and CM and also group leaders as well. And we're coming back to a special meeting of Constitutional Governance on March the 3rd. We did decide at that meeting we held with the group leaders that we did not want to rip everything up and start afresh, because with the time that is available to us, that would be extremely problematic. We are fully aware of a number of different local areas where there are strong concerns from communities and particularly ward division members. And I think that we were charged that I think to actually try and iron out some of those issues and actually discuss with those ward members and come up with some counter proposals in the hope that on March the 3rd we could draw together and get a county-wide submission. I have to say, for the chair, I do hope that we are successful for this, or it's quite clear the LGBC would like to see a Somerset Council submission going forward. It would be quite unprecedented in these types of reviews if a council submission was not submitted. And I think corporately, I'm using my words carefully, it would not look very good if, having asked for an extension of the review and been granted unprecedentedly 6 weeks extra, if we were then further to that, not to submit a council-wide submission. I do not think it would look very professional in terms of corporately this council if we were not able to do that. So, Alan, would you like to? I've sort of done a bit of introducing, but you can put the facts on there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to just to provide an update to members. I think, in fairness, the Chair's I think the expression will be eaten quite a few of my sandwiches there, so that's incredibly helpful. Thank you. But I think what we want to do is just sort of set out the process and particularly the timescale we'd be working to. I'm not sure if we could put the presentation up just to kind of help guide through the conversation. Whilst we work out the kind of technical gremlins, it's fair to say that as part of the phase 1 consultation response, sorry, no, I'll go back just to kind of emphasise something that Chair mentioned. We were very, very surprised that the LGBC gave us a grant. I think, in fairness, Chair, the conversation I had with Chair, you and both the Vice Chair, there was a degree of surprise beyond belief when I spoke to you both in terms of that.
I remember late Friday afternoon about 5 o'clock getting this frantic call from Tim saying, "Ross, what are you doing?" Alan, the monitor officer, is trying to go on. What have I done?
Well, nobody wants to
recall, but thank you very much for calling me back on that Friday afternoon.
Always a pleasure. I think nobody wants that on a Friday afternoon, do they? But as part of the process, I think we were surprised. I think the critical part of that is, having asked for it, and the Chair's already stated this, but really, I need to be really, really clear from an officer perspective. We recommended previously from an officer perspective that a corporate submission with member endorsement is key. Having asked for the extension, to not submit something would be difficult and reputationally damaging. So I need to be really clear of the consequence of that, to the point where, and I'll come on to this in a second in terms of the presentation. So in terms of the, nope, that's fine. If you just go to second slide, John, if you could, the progress. So the draft working group ultimately rejected the committee's, the draft working group scheme was ultimately rejected by the committee. No scheme was submitted. We did submit a covering letter, just set out some principles, which you've all seen, I hope, but no formal submission as part of that process. As a result, the LGBC don't benefit from any engagement as a result of that. There are several schemes that have been submitted by individual members, by individuals, by groups. They don't carry the same weight, is what we are led to believe that a corporate submission would have, but clearly they may or may not have some weight as part of their due considerations moving forward. As I say, it's unprecedented to be given a 6-week extension, hence why it's been taken that way. Next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say, though, we recognise how difficult and challenging this is in terms of identifying, and whilst I've always strived for perfection in one's career, I've never achieved it yet, but this is definitely one of those instances where we're going to be achieving perfection. This is one of those situations whereby it won't solve all of the issues that are being raised and all of the concerns that are being raised. It is the best fit in order for the LGBTE to have something to work from that they can then go through that consultation and engagement moving forward. So I think that's the critical part of this. It's not about achieving something that's absolutely perfect, that satisfies all of these issues, but moreover, starting to set out what the next steps are likely to be. So that's all the issue slide kind of covers. Next slide, please, John. So our recommended next steps, really, we would believe that the core principle is to use the working group draft scheme as a starting point for review. I think the Chair's already said to rip that up and start again, we know would be difficult and probably unachievable. And there were a number of key principles that working group had adhered to through the process. As part of that conversation, we have had that conversation now with the chair, vice chair, and group leaders regarding the approach, an appropriate way forward. And that was potentially to identify areas of significant disagreement with the design scheme and place those forward as part of that review. So the concept of, and I'm sure you'll all think it as I say this, but the concept effectively of taking the original scheme and looking at whether there are areas or boundaries that could be tweaked and adjusted to address any key principal concerns. Now, I'll remember firmly the conversation, and clearly the conversation was had at the committee, whereby the conversation was make one tweak here, and of course it has a consequential impact all the way from, and I'll quote, ex mortu frum was the quote that was used. However, we know that there are some instances where those individual tweaks could be made. However, it's important that we do that, and then we can then consider what the adjustments are likely to be. So the proposal is that there are utilising the current scheme to use the feedback from leaders around any particular areas of concern or particular areas of disagreement, and work out through the knowledge of the officers whether there is any proposals, options that could be brought forward that have that consideration. To work through with the group leaders, the chair and the vice chair of this committee moving forward to consider how they would be brought forward. So it means that individual members could work through their groups and their group management structures in order to put those matters through. And then effectively have an extraordinary meeting on the 3rd of March, which is immediately prior to the scheme submission on the 4th. There's nothing like a deadline, is there? So in terms of the update and next steps, the officers met with group leaders and the chair and vice chair on the 30th of January. It was agreed that we will continue to improve the scheme originally developed by the working group. The groups, via their leaders, will send back specific feedback to officers on principles, areas, and what we have termed red lines. So those things that not to be crossed, those matters that are absolutely paramount to be resolved through this discussion. The officers will then amend the draft scheme based upon that feedback and then present that back to the group leaders or their nominated deputies. And thank you to those members that have come back and made those nominations, and the chair and vice chair of this committee. That would be fed back on the 13th of February, and then another date would follow as part of that process to allow officers to make any amendments following that feedback, and then the final draft scheme presented on the 3rd of March. All of that is incredibly tight and incredibly compressed as part of that, particularly when we're looking at publication dates for key meetings. So we recognise how difficult this is going to be, particularly at a challenging time of year around budget setting. If agreed, then we would then sit to the LGPC on the 4th of March. With regret, members, we find ourselves in a situation of having to recommend that we may need to, in order to protect the risks associated with not submitting a scheme, consider whether an officer scheme is then submitted based upon all the work is brought forward. That is the extreme option, and not one that I or the chief executive would take lightly in any way, shape or form. And we would much prefer to get to a scheme that has the endorsement of members, because of course any scheme that is submitted without that endorsement would clearly need to be marked and labelled as not having political support and having no support through the committee making process. So its weight diminishes significantly. At that point, Chair, I'll stop.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Stephen, do you wish to add anything at this stage about your work on how you're getting on with this? I know you and your team have put an enormous amount of work over before Christmas on these various different proposals.
Chair, I'm making some progress with the submissions from group leaders. Some are, let's say, relatively easily dealt with. Others have already obviously been seen outside, because I've had 3 parish councils object to one political party's views. All right, sorry. Yes, I've had I'd say 3 parish councils have already objected to one political party's submissions. I don't know how they got hold of them, but obviously they have.
Are you able to elaborate on that? Or?
I'm not sure that it's the right thing to do. It's one political party's views.
I'm just trying to work out why we can't know which parish councils have objected. I can't quite understand why we wouldn't be able to know which parish councils have made representations. But I'll come back to that.
I can do it, Chair. Just, I thought it might embarrass the political party and the parish council. Okay.
I think more information the better, more open information the better.
It's May.
It's 3 parishes, who, I need to get the information up. Hang on, bear with me. It was the Green Party's proposal, and it's around with Liscombe, and 3 parishes which are proposed by the Green Party to be linked with Liscombe. They don't wish to be. They wish to continue to be with Exmoor side of the county rather than the other.
Sorry, could I have a follow on?
That's a good point. That's a good point to make. I was quite useful to know. Thank you, because it helps us to frame our own sort of question as well.
So I just want to clarify the time frame, Alan and Steve. The 13th of February you mentioned is the final date, which is 3 days away. So am I to understand that if we previously sent emails in, that has been covered off? Is there anything more we need to do if we're using that previous working party document as the basis, which obviously I expressed quite strong feelings about at the last meeting? I just need to know, are my considerations already in the process, or do I need to do something else prior to the 13th? I'm not quite sure how you're merging all the other versions that were then created, and which bits of which ones will definitely get included and which ones might not. Basically, I don't want to arrive at the 3rd of March finding out something that is still totally unacceptable. And I'm really concerned about that 3rd of March being the day before it has to be submitted. Is there no chance that that can be earlier than the 3rd of March?
I'll deal with the second point first, and I'll turn to Steve for the first point, through you, Chair, if I may. In essence, with the way that we have worked this timescale based upon workloads and the need to kind of make those amendments and tweaks, we couldn't find another alternative date earlier than the 3rd. Mainly as well, there are a number of other committee meetings that are going on, particularly around budget setting and the like, that kind of create that clash and that particular issue. One of the options, and hence why we wanted to work through group leaders in particular, was to provide an opportunity to kind of funnel a lot of that feedback through. But we recognise there may be instances whereby previous feedback has already been put through. So we have some of that evidence as part of the process. We do need another date after the 13th. So that's Thursday. We do need another date, which will probably be at some point next week, in order to kind of finalise all of this information. And of course, as part of these sessions, we'll continue to keep members engaged as this develops. Otherwise, we run the risk of getting to the 3rd with this being a kind of a big bang presentation of all the issues and changes, and that's probably not going to be appropriate. So we'll need to work out how we continue to keep you engaged in the process, but I'll work through the chair in that particular instance.
Let's admit that, Alan, could somebody give some clarity, if they're not really to Dawn, but presentations and strong concerns from previously have already been noted and have been worked up as part of the process, or does Dawn need to then further to this resubmit concerns and comments that are part of the process? Okay.
Chair, I'm trying to make as few amendments as possible. That said, we tend to get in, and originally had in, contradictory submissions from members, from political parties, etc. So it was always working through a fine balance as to where we got to, simply because there was no one unified view coming from members. So I'll try and keep as much as I can of the original scheme. I am looking at more at some 2-member or multi-member divisions as a possibility, but it's just working through what we have, what we had, and what we're still likely to get.
I guess I'm still slightly concerned from what you're saying because the draft document was so far off what would work for my particular area. I'm not really feeling convinced that what I might want to suggest is going to be accepted or considered as part of the new document. You know, the 2-member ward thing wouldn't be particularly relevant in my area. I'm just, what I'm not hearing as well is the kind of variances there are in the various documents that have been brought forward. So you've had a working group document, but then you've had a few other versions. It would be kind of helpful to see what some of those other versions look like compared to the working document.
Yeah, they tend to be isolated parts of the area, not holistic. So I have, you know, if I have to look at a bit more room, then it will be a small bit of room that the comments relate to. No, nobody's giving me a, this is the whole.
What I need to know is, does Dawn need to resubmit her concerns and comments regarding the area around Comet Park, or do you already have plans to draw the proposal together in reflecting Dawn's already part of the process, which is resubmit?
Got the original Comet Road back together again. What I can't do, and everybody knows this amongst the officer group, is fitting Troll with the rest of Thornton.
Sorry, can I come back? I'm really, really concerned that this is not going to be any better than the previous document. And I'm really concerned that we are then using the basis of the working group document from what to go forward when there are alternatives out there which might better meet quite a few numbers of objections that were received at that meeting that we held in January, which varied from that working group document. I'm really concerned that the working group document is the basis and will not change very much when there were a large number of objections to that document.
Other suggestions? I know a suggestion that gone through by this process. Anna, and then there's more members wish to speak.
Thank you. I think just to kind of support Steve's point and to address Councillor Johnson's query as well, I think for the avoidance of doubt, please send them through so that they don't get missed as part of that. So if that's already been sent, then that we have them in on file and record. We will be clear as part of that feedback what we've been able to take to account of and what we haven't. It's quite, I need to be clear though. So all of that information, sorry, Chair, all that information has been submitted. It will be considered as part of this process. But I go back to my point about it's not going to be perfect. There is a risk that we won't be able to take into account all of those issues. And I don't wish to, I'm not focusing on Councillor Johnson's area at all. Moreover, the point that we simply won't be able to deal with all of those individual idiosyncrasies across every area. This will be a best fit, but it's likely to have a number of issues with it as part of this process. But we will take into account all the feedback that members want to put in, but at some point there'll have to be a best fit line, which is unlikely to satisfy all of the queries.
Useful for outside of this meeting for Dawn to have a conversation with Stephen, so we can out it.
Thank you for that offer. I don't think I'm alone on that working group document, and I am concerned that some of that objection that came to the previous Constitution and Governance meeting may not get fed into the next version. I'm really concerned.
Here's some other members as well. Helen Kay was next, and
Martin. Okay, thank you. First of all, I don't know anything. I'd just like to say I don't know anything about the green idea. It's another one of my colleagues probably, or a local group. I want to just ask a general question about waiting. It's great that we've got the extra 6 weeks, and I assume that that the submission that we put in from Somerset Council will have a greater weight than other individual people putting in their individual submissions. I've heard contradictory comments about this. I've heard that they regard them with equal weight, and then at other times I've wondered if it's so important for us to agree something, surely that would have more weight. So that's the first question. And the reason that's important, talking about political parties, I think I've seen one from the Lib Dems. I think there was a Lib Dem version which was really concerned to me. Frome does vote Green, and there was one. I already have the largest division by population in the whole of Somerset, and it's a growth area because we don't have a phosphates problem, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And under the working group version, we had something like, I had something like 5,000 in the division that would have been mine. Under the Lib Dem version, I had 5,800 electorate. That would have been a 20% variance on what we had agreed that we wanted to have as an average number of electorate. It was quite incredible, and obviously that would have put me off standing again in that division, to have had such a huge division. And I want to know if that's been submitted to the local government review people, if I then have to make a complaint about that and say that how strongly I disagree with that individually to them. I'm just confused about the process and about where I put my comments in about what. So that's my main point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In essence, and this is one of the reasons why we're recommending a corporate response. In essence, you don't have an ability to write and complain or provide your additional representations until consultation starts. And that's one of the key issues that we have. So if a scheme has been submitted by any group, any individual, any parish council, whoever it may be, there is no effective right of reply as part of this process. The only benefit is that by granting an additional 6-week period, there is the right of reply within that 6-week period, but it would only be your comments that will be taken into account. The purpose of providing a corporate response provides the opportunity for the LGBC to compile something that takes into account all that different information and come up with a proposal that we can then engage with meaningfully. And that's the overall approach that they're suggesting.
Can I just come back? I don't know, Stephen, if you wanted to say something. All right. I've lost my point. I have to come back at the end of everybody else.
So, Councillor Kay as well. I mean, for instance, if this paints a scenario where what you were concerned about was proposed by the Boundary Commission in their first tranche of proposals to the public, they are then opened up again to a shorter period of public consultation, and you then have another check and balance opportunity to make comments about, say, well, this is what you're proposing based on a proposal which is about 5,800. You would have a formal public opportunity then to challenge that.
Actually, that was my next question, which was about the timetable. So as far as I understand it, they're not actually even going to come up with proposals until something like towards the end of 2025, and during which time we've also got a very large planning application which may go through in Frome, and it may go through in the summer, and that could then still possibly feed into the local government review people directly, even if it doesn't come from Somerset Council. Is that right?
So my college just updated me that it's June 25. We would the first, so effectively the consultation would commence as part of that. So the first engagement point would be June 25. Yeah. Yes, this time around.
All that together, and then consider what the representations they've had, and then by December, then they would have their proposals ready to step forward at late for Parliament. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. As the endorsement, preferred endorsement is to have member endorsement of the proposal that goes forward on the 3rd of March, can I just have confirmation that the view of this committee is considered to be sufficient member endorsement, and nothing else is required. Thank you.
View of this committee, which would consider view of this committee, which is that if we were to accept and propose a corporate Somerset Council submission, that's based upon the votes of this committee on the 3rd of March, isn't it?
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I was on the working group, and I am very conscious of the macro result that was produced. It was one that, in my view, didn't satisfy everybody and every concern, but nevertheless did make a convincing attempt at producing an across Somerset result. By no means easy to achieve, and surely there would be areas within that where some individuals, particularly some areas, might not be absolutely happy, but nevertheless, it was a big picture. I do have a concern that in trying to address some individual concerns, we are going to end up with something that will just upset another lot of individuals, and we will just go through this process all over again. So I'll register that concern now and expect the pressure that Mr. Lake will now be under to try to produce something that will at least satisfy a few more people. But it's going to be a tough call. I say that partly, and he's referenced with us, and let me take that as an example. Really, until we had the last Constitution and Governance meeting, when Councillor Mansell, who was substituting at that meeting, brought up the issue of Wiveliscombe, it hadn't really figured hugely in our conversations. I'm very aware of the feelings of some of the parishes to the north of Wiveliscombe about where their community interest lies, and Officer Lake's original proposal accommodated that quite successfully. I note that on page 29 of our agenda papers today, Wiveliscombe is the only rural area that's referenced. North Petherton and Bridgewater, Taunton, I quite accept that was always going to be a tricky one, and it was really causing us in the working group quite a lot of concern, particularly around North Petherton. And I'm sure there were refinements and adjustments that could be made there. However, the Wiveliscombe one is a good example. Once you start fiddling with a rural area and geographically large parishes, not necessarily populous, but geographically large, the whole thing starts potentially to disintegrate. So I have to register my concern there on that one, and I do urge that as much as possible we try not to alter the original working group submission too much, because otherwise the danger is we're just going to go back and we're going to have another conversation where everything will fall decidedly apart. And I hear what Mr. Jones said about, if absolutely necessary, there will be an officer submission without democratic imprimatur, effectively. And if that's what we've got to do, that's what we've got to do. But it would be so much better if we could coalesce around something that was generally acceptable. And I have to say, in my view, you're not going to get very far away from what was submitted in the first place. However, I wait to see Officer Lake work his magic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. Online, Stu Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. I think some of what I was going to ask may be covered, but I'd just like to draw your attention to the clerk's note that was sent out earlier today, I think by Ali Lang, where you were informing everybody finally that the Boundary Commission has extended the deadline to the 4th of March and that the Constitution and Governance Committee is meeting today. However, you have said nothing in there that parish councils, if they wish to contribute further, need to make their submissions to Officer Lake, to this council. So they have no idea, I suspect, that the deadline to do that is actually 3 days away, the 14th. I imagine they would still go direct to the Boundary Commission. Now, from what I'm hearing today, it sounds as though it may not be a great idea because they're not necessarily going to get taken into account the views of individuals of smaller parishes. Because if we submit something, and the odds are we will, on the 4th of March, that will sort of almost trump just about everything else. So how are we going to ensure that the parishes are aware that as well as submitting to LGBCE, they also submit directly to yourselves? I certainly submitted my views to the local government as per your last ask, Chairman, at the last meeting. I've also submitted them as per protocol through the through my group representatives. Whether I've been heard or not, I don't know. So just to confirm, we need to again make submission to Officer Lake, and any parishes who wish to engage a comment, they too must make their communications by that date. And like Councillor Pugsley and others, I do have concerns that at the end of all this, we're going to be no further forward, and that we are going to be presented with a fait accompli on the 3rd. When you do your deliberations on the 13th, will there be any sort of draft paper come up to this committee or anyone else, so we can perhaps feedback further, so as there could be possibly any tweaks by the time that paper comes? Because it sounds like it's going to be presented as a fait accompli, one way or another.
Thank you, Chair. Excellent points in terms of the key concerns and queries. The issue is we haven't got a significant amount of time for that level of engagement. We don't have the time for that engagement with our towns, with our parishes, regrettably. This is for the council through this committee to refine the original working group proposal within the 6-week extension we were given, and provide an opportunity to develop something that is more agreeable to you as a committee prior to submission. So that engagement and that extension, the parishes and the communities have already submitted their views to an extent. And as a result of that, that's the elements that can be taken into account. But regrettably, with this very short, extraordinary extension that we've been granted, the ability to engage with towns and parishes, I'm afraid, isn't available to us. That's a risk as part of this process, but that's a risk that, again, you as committee asked for the extension, so we have requested it, and I think it's a consequence now of working at a significant level of pace as a result. I appreciate that is not what you as members will probably want to hear, because you want to engage with your communities, but regrettably, with the timescale that you have available to you, I don't believe that would be appropriate or possible in any meaningful way.
Mandy Chilcott is online.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for, oh, sorry, was Councillor Osborne coming back?
Yeah, I wanted to come back on that because we knew within days of the 20th of January deadline that this extension has been granted. I raised it at our local community network meeting on the 31st. Nobody knew about it, and even the chairman of our LCN, Councillor Mike Best, seemed unaware. Why has it taken so long for us to put out a parish briefing note that's only gone out today saying there's been an extension? I'm sure we could have been a lot slicker, and maybe if necessary have actually advised parishes sooner that it might be an idea to feed in to the Somerset Council submission as well as the Boundary Commission.
I can assure Councillor Osborne that, certainly from my perspective, all members were notified very, very quickly of the extension to the 4th of March. Alan, do you want to speak to some of the other points?
I think, Chair, I completely understand the concerns and frustrations and understand the position. it is regrettable that the 6-week extension, as I say, doesn't allow or enable that level of engagement that's there. We have, as a courtesy, kind of provided an update because we had a number of parishes that were asking, where is the submission? Can we see what's been provided back? So we have confirmed the fact that we have submitted only a high-level response with no firm proposals within it, and that we've been granted an extension in order to enable us to agree a overall corporate response in line with the recommendation and the request from committee. But I do recognise all of the comments and concerns. It's just simply the time won't allow us to do anything further than what we've already done in terms of that engagement piece.
Amanda Chilcott, you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would say that I echo Councillor Pugsley's comments. The comments I'm about to make will be familiar to you, Chair, because obviously I was at the group meeting. And just for clarity, the Conservative group, because we've talked about other groups here today, did submit the working paper from our group with a side letter covering some areas we felt that could be given a little more focus, and we did that because at the time it was highly unlikely, in my view, and I was surprised that they would reopen the consultation, and we felt that there was a lot of merit in the work that had been done in that working paper. So just for transparency for everybody, my concerns now and when the extension was requested remain the same, in that we are going to be facing a report that could have some amendments in it. My concern that in pleasing some with those amendments, it might upset others, and those other people that might have been happy with the original submission may not be happy with changes that are being made, and the timescales will allow them no response. And I will also say that a number of towns and parishes responded to the working paper documents, and I think that was welcome generally. Those are now sitting on record and might actually be at odds with any new submission. So I think it's added a lot of confusion to the process, and I think it will be the poorer for the lack of time for engagement with our towns and parishes. So I think this high-risk approach. My concern is that there were some that were really not happy. A lot of councillors were happy. We have 110. And my concern is that whatever you put forward is just physically, I've never known it before, that everybody is going to be happy. So it's how that is managed as a committee and as a council in the response. My only suggestion ahead of time would be that as at the last meeting, there was a suggestion of a side letter for those that were not finally comfortable with what came forward. And I wonder if ahead of time that could be considered as an option should there be some unhappiness around some of the ideas that come forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think a much higher risk strategy not trying to do this. And I think we need to be positive about this and try and iron out some of the issues. I think if we had more time initially, we might have been able to come up with something better. And I think there's an opportunity to try and address some of the issues there. I'm glad to clarify, Mandy, the comments that the original working party proposals have now been submitted by the Conservative Party proposals. Unless I missed it, I couldn't remember you stating or outing that when we had our group meeting. And my understanding was you said that there were a number of members in your group who were unhappy with the original working party proposal. So I'm not sure how unhappy they were. If you then sent on the proposals of the working party and for Conservative Party, there we are. But I may have misunderstood what you said at that meeting.
Right, so I'll be very, very clear, and I have written to the Leader of Council since. I did say we had submitted it and was very clear about that, and have written to clarify that if there was any ambiguity. And as for, there were a couple of areas that we wrote the side letter with, and that was submitted as well, because that was fair to do. And I think, you know, the Boundary Commission can have the opportunity to look at some areas and see whether there is anything they can do. And I feel that was a positive approach, but literally a few not a large number for clarification for committee.
Thank you. I mean, again, I may have missed it, but I certainly got an email after our meeting on the 30th of January with group leaders that you had submitted the working party proposals that the Conservative group submission, but I wasn't aware that you'd actually sent that out to the group leaders meeting on 30th of January, which was after the initial vote member representation of the LGBT. But we are where we are, and I think we need to be positive and try and rescue some of this and try and come up with something which satisfies more members than satisfies initially. Of course, it will be nigh impossible to for everybody to be happy with the outcome there. But I think we need to try. And there were some major areas like where Councillor Johnson was outlining, where I think we need to come up with something better, and I think we can do. Lee Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. A few points and comments. I was a little bit concerned when the extension was granted that it would be a can of worms that would be open. I'm afraid this is more like a skip load. It is going to cause a number of issues and problems, which I think we could have circumvented. And in fact, to take your words, we should have circumvented it because that was the whole idea of the working group. My concern number one is the fact that we're now lumping a lot of pressure on one or two of our already busy officers that potentially will be put in, we are putting in the lines of fire for some responses. If it's, Chair, the surprise on your face is to clarify what I'm saying. When we had a working group, it was the working group's decision of what the proposal was. Now that we've got the unclear position we're in where, it might be the group leaders, but the officers bring it to us. Just in today's meeting alone, we've had 3 members that have expressed different opinions to what we had. You said right from the very beginning, the working group's outcome will be trying to bring as much positive nature to the proposal that we had before. We've now opened a massive problem, which we're encountering as we go. As we sit here today, we are 3 weeks into the 6-week extension. I hate to go over old ground, but right the first day of the working group, I made perfectly clear that we should go back and ask for more time, because with the jigsaw pieces that we've been given to work with, we wouldn't have, and that was dismissed totally. I agree. Most of us in this room, most of us that heard when we were at your last full meeting that we were going to go back and ask for an extension, didn't expect one, but we've got one now. So that's my first bit of concern. My second one, with all due respect, I may have heard incorrectly, but Mr. Jones, in his presentation, gave the indication that a Somerset proposal may hold more weight than anyone else's. If that was the case, then that's totally blown out of proportion anything that we've been told beforehand. Because every single time I've heard what's going on, everyone's been saying everyone's submission will carry the same amount of weight. Well, what is it? If Somerset's position is going to have more weight than others, then we need to go back to the beginning and start again, because we wouldn't be here if we realised that was the case to start off with. Another bit of clarification, just so that everyone's clear, the day that this council received an email saying that we'd be given the extension, the Boundary Commission's website was updated and everyone has the same extension. So anyone can still submit their proposals back into the system. I echo, I think it was Councillor Chilcott's concern about the window following. So if this committee are going to make a decision on the 3rd of March that's then submitted on the 4th, it does limit the ability for anyone to add additional comments to it from their personal submissions. That's concerning for me. And the reason the majority, the working group was supported because it was cross-party and it aimed to find a consensus. You made it perfectly clear, and I totally agree. This meeting itself has already shown that we ain't going to please everyone, and that's still going to be the case. And it would be interesting to see how this committee think more members will be able to accept the next proposal than did the last, because it seems to be down to just a handful of people. I have submitted my personal comments to Officer Lake to allow his response. But again, so I'm concerned that we're maybe creating some unnecessary pressure for or potential conflict for an officer of this council through this process. The jigsaw pieces still ain't going to change, so it's not going to be perfect, but we need to find a way forward. I personally, much as I hate to have to say it, do support the majority of the previous proposal, and I think that to say it forms a grounds for working from, because it's already been indicated. We were told all the way through the process, you move one little jigsaw piece and it has a consequential effect on so many others. I welcome and thank the officers for their efforts. I will continue to and I'm sorry, but this can of worms has become massive and unnecessary.
It is necessary. I disagree with you there, Lee, on this one, because it's necessary because we keep talking about the recommendations brought forward by the Working Party. They were rejected. They were voted down by the committee. So what is the alternative? Do we then not ask the Commission for an extension, which we did do, was accepted? I really do thank the work of officers doing, and they are working very, very hard on this, but I think officers were understanding of this and were willing to put that time in to prepare that submission, knowing it is onerous. I'm not going to understate that at all. We'll have to try. What's the alternative? The Working Party, it's pointless really, as continues to debate what the Working Party said and what the Working Party didn't, because the Working Party proposals were voted down, so we have to find another way forward. We have no choice but to do that. Is that going to be easy? No, it's not. Is everybody happy? No, there are not. But there is a window for us to try and come up with something which has more broader consensus support than proposals brought forward by the Working Party, voted down by the Constitution and Governance Committee at the last meeting.
Thank you, Chair. And just my apologies if I've misspoke or misled the committee. It wasn't an intent at all around weighting of responses. I think just to be absolutely clear, it's a notable exception not to have a corporate response submitted by a council in an LGBC review. So I just want to correct the record on that particular point. It's a notable exception not to have a council submission associated with it. So hence why it's important that you have your views submitted as an authority, so that the LGBC can work from that as well as much as they can. All the other points. So my apologies if I spoke around waiting, but it's an inference, that I've taken from the way in which we were granted an extension so easily at our request.
I will note from the chair, there was my own personal opinion, that the vast majority of the members coming forward and saying the time frame and why are we doing this are members who were broadly supportive of the Working Party's initial proposals. And I think we need to remember this, and we need to respect and be sensitive to those members who are very, very strong concerns about that. And, that we need to try and do something to try and ameliorate that if it's at all possible.
Thank you, Chairman. By now, unfortunately, everything I was going to say has been said by all the other members. My arm got tired, but never mind. Point you just made, Chairman, you said that I think that the Working Party was only a draft, it's been turned down. But we've just heard that is the basis of what we're going forward on. And quite frankly, Chairman, if it's a starting point, we are never, ever going to get the work done necessary within the next 3 weeks. You and I and Count Pugsley and others were on the working group, and quite frankly, it was I only substituted a couple of times, but it was to me a very worthwhile exercise and completely unpolitical, I might add. I think it's worth saying. There seems to be some political element that seems to have crept in this meeting particularly. And I think that's most unfortunate because the Working Party was doing their best on an almost impossible task. And I'm surprised to hear now that you are saying that's not the basis is what going forward. And I thought that's what the officer said earlier on. So I'm surprised at that. And I also would like to repeat that having had some dealings with this, that nobody's going to be very happy with it. Some people more than others. Some are going to be very unhappy. But the ones who haven't looked at the whole picture, we've heard it said 2 or 3 times already. And you really, when you're doing this work, if you don't look at the whole picture, you are not going to be able to do it, because you aren't going to be able to satisfy individual, my own wards in charge. I don't agree with what's being done, but I didn't agree, but I have to say the document that's gone forward is the best that can be done. And that is what we've got to aim for. And frankly, in the next 3 weeks, we're not going to rewrite the whole thing. It's going to be on the basis of what the working party submitted. And the fact was turned down by this committee is true, but the whole new plan to satisfy all the various little individual problems with it. And so we shall see. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. It's ideal that we have cross-party support for any changes, and we do a cross-party submission. We're already in extra time. We were lucky to get an extension. So I can't see why we're revisiting the detail here. Parishes, I feel, already have ample opportunity to comment, and many of them did. And many councillors advised their parishes to do so. If councillors didn't, then that's down to them. As regards individual concerns, I think they're less than 10% of councillors. And those councillors have concerns. Can they say they've got cross-party support for the changes they want? Is it just them? And at the end of the day, it's important to get it right. But the majority of the population of Somerset couldn't give a about what the boundaries are. They really couldn't. And finally, just want to say side letter means something completely different to Madeline and I from our banking history, but that's another.
Yeah, so there's quite a number of points here. Obviously, you know, any proposal is not going to suit everybody, and even any amendment is not going to suit everybody. There are going to be, you know, people that are affected by any changes that now get made. That's the situation people who found themselves in unacceptable positions are in. So, you know, I totally accept not everyone's going to be happy all the time. I struggle with an element of saying it was a cross-party response when the Conservative Party submitted that document and other parties didn't. So that doesn't quite fit for me. If it was cross-party wise, only one political party submitting that. There's a few things I'm not quite clear on. I mean, obviously there was a cross-party working group. It was rejected by this committee by a majority number. That is democracy. It wasn't considered acceptable by this committee. That's democracy in process. So that's why it's being revisited, because it wasn't acceptable by it was outvoted at that meeting as being not acceptable. That is democracy. And for people who don't like the fact that the working group's document wasn't taken through, that's why it wasn't taken through. What I'm not quite clear on, if this, and I'd like clarification really, who decided that the revised work was going to be based on the original working group document? Because obviously there have been a number of alternative proposals put forward. I just wanted to know who had decided that that was the basis for the revision work that was going to be looked at. And my other question is, if at the meeting on the 3rd you don't get, what I'm not quite clear on, if it's going to be cross-party, does that mean that all the group leaders have to have agreed to it before the meeting on the 3rd, and then it comes forward as a cross-party document? Or at the meeting on the 3rd, are this committee voting again? If it gets rejected, I thought I heard you say that the council may then decide to make a submission, and that would be separate from the decision taken at the Constitution and Governance meeting. So Who will be making that decision to submit a document that is not supported by the Constitution and Governance Committee? Concerns me.
Yes, of course. So in terms of the governance process associated with support for a submission, that would come through this committee. So the purpose and the process that was set out was discussed and agreed with the group leaders. I'll use the word agreed loosely though as part of that conversation. It was the best option and that enabled a submission to come forward within the limited time, and all group leaders expressed concern around the timescale and the ability to achieve everything that's been said at the committee, however recognised the benefit of putting a submission forward. In terms of the officer-based response, that would be a matter for the chief executive and with advice from myself and the team in terms of whether we would take that forward. As I say, that's an extreme option and not one that we would like to see, and particularly not one that's there. It's for consideration as to whether there is any additional benefits in ensuring that there is a corporate response, noting that it doesn't have member endorsement or support. So as a result of that, the LGBC will take that into consideration as part of the response, but that option still remains as part of that next step.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point of clarification. Hopefully that was missed. Originally, when this council was asked to do a boundary review, they said that this committee were asked to set up a working group. At the time, the decision was taken to let that working group be cross-party. In fact, that working group included a number of members of this committee, the chair and vice chair included. After long deliberations, that working group came up with a proposal. The working group fully supported. In fact, if I remember correctly, if the working group, I stand to be corrected, unanimously supported the proposal that we put to this committee. When that proposal was put to this committee, it also received officer endorsed support. So I think the confusion there was more a matter, it was some members of this committee may have changed their mind since between those meetings for the decision to be voted down. So we had a working party proposal that was ready to go forward, cross-party, that wouldn't suit everyone. So I hope the clarification was there. It means quite simply was that this committee voted down a proposal that was both endorsed by the working group and officers.
Working party was cross-party. There are members of the Constitution and Governance Committee on that. It did come up with proposals which, as you quite rightly stated, were unanimously supported by members of the Working Party. But it became absolutely clear when we brought it forward to the Constitution and Governance Committee at the last meeting, that report did not gather support of the committee. And as Councillor Johnson said, that is democracy. It was not garnering the support of members of the committee, the overall majority. I don't know if you're referring to me as one of the people, probably you are. I unanimously was one of those people who supported the report of the Working Party to be brought forward to the Constitution and Governance Committee. And I was not going to sit there and ignore democracy and vote for something which it was utterly clear, crystal clear, the vast majority of members of the committee did not support. I was not going to put myself in the position of chair of blindly voting for something which did not have the support of the committee on which I was chair of. So I want my vote at the Constitution and Governance Committee was clearly to reflect the overall views of members of that committee. And that is democracy. And that is why we're in a position now of trying to come up with something which is better, which has more support of members of the committee. And I think that's what we need to focus upon.
I think we're going round in circles. To be quite honest, at the end of the day, there was a working group, and they've tried their best to submit a proposal. But I've got no doubt that within that working group, people made sure that their areas were fine to a degree, and there was, well, even maybe not, okay, maybe not, that's a fair challenge, but either way, it was clear that when it came back to the Constitution and Governance, there was an awful lot of unhappy people that felt that their views haven't been understood, not ignored, but understood. And I think that's where we're coming from. Where the problem lies. Now, there's been an opportunity to try and iron out some of this, I think it's ridiculous just keep on going round in circles saying he said, who said. Let's just get on with it and see what comes out at the end of it.
Positively and try and get something to bring forward to the 3rd of March, which will get the support of the majority of members of this committee. What is the alternative? Sit here and rake over old ground and then do nothing and then put ourselves in a position, the unpalatable position of this council looking at the very least unprofessional by not producing a submission which has been supported by Somerset Council put forward. I don't want the council to be in that position of looking unprofessional. I don't want to rake over old ground. I was chair of that working party. We worked very hard on that. We worked 10 times harder. We brought forward the proposals. I'm quite relaxed that as chair of that working party, I'm not going to be worried of being beaten up by the fact that those proposals were not supported by Constitution and Governance Committee. That is democracy, and we need to reflect upon that and take note of that and think, okay, that wasn't supportive. Let's find something which can get broad support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, can I draw our attention then to page 29 and move the recommended next steps? Caveating with an ESCOM, but otherwise, can we just move forward on this basis? Wish the officers well in their endeavour, and trust that when we get to this meeting on the 3rd of March, peace, light, and joy will prevail, and we will be able to approve a submission. Because I will repeat what I said at the last meeting of this committee. I think it is absolutely essential that there is a submission from this council. I have never known any authority not make a submission to the Banbury Commission for a rewarding exercise in its authority area. And I think it will be greatly to the detriment of this authority and therefore to the council area if we do not. So I look forward to the 3rd of March and think that I will be able to vote for the proposals put forward, but I'll move the recommended next steps on page 29.
Do you have a seconder for that? Okay, several people raising their hands. A seconder. We'll take Simon as a seconder. All those carried. Moving on to item number 7, which is the work programme, pages 37 and sorry, Adam. What's time?
Joe, just running. I mean, some of the concern is we don't want to be surprised on the 3rd of March. Is there any chance that if there's talk about something happening on the 13th of February, the results of that could be distributed to members? Is it terribly secret?
We'll get some clarification.
I mean,
from
if people have got concern then.
The process in terms of communicating the results of deliberation of officers and of group leaders in good, timely time for people to process that before the meeting on the 3rd of March. Yeah. We'd like to comment on the process of that information together and pass it down to members of this committee.
Again, if it's helpful, and as you know, the agenda and all supporting papers will be published on Friday, the 21st of February. That'll be to all committee members, and also obviously available to members of the public, and therefore be viewable on the website. That's the timetable we're working to. Clearly, in advance of that, we'll have had discussions with all 5 political group leaders as well as part of finalising those proposals.
Then to page 37, 38, item number 7, the work programme. I'm going to invite members and other elected members to comment upon the work programme. Are there any recommendations for any suggested amendments to that work programme for the?
Hi, you will have got an email from me suggesting amendments to the minutes, and then I was late, so I was not able to put those amendments forward. It was because there was a 5-minute conversation at the end of the last meeting in December, the formal meeting where we discussed the work programme, where the planning terms of reference were supposed to be considered in March this year. And as I understand it, we only change the constitution once a year and get it voted on at the AGM. Is that right? We put changes. That's my first question.
No.
Oh, right. OK, that's good. All right. OK, good. And it was suggested that because the Labour government's new shake up of planning, and they're going to have this scheme of delegation, this national scheme of delegation coming down to us, that we waited I went on the website at the weekend on the gov.uk website, and I found that it's a sort of open consultation. It's not got a timescale, so they're just taking comments on how we might change a national scheme of delegation about what goes to officers and what goes to planning committees. They consider that planning committees and the democratic right to sort of call things in sort of creates a logjam. And so they just want lots more to be done by officers. And of course, that would be more efficient. But we've looked at the planning constitution twice. First, when we looked at it within this group, without having a working group, when we first became a unitary council, we did not feel it was necessary to have a working group. The second time round, we had a working group, and they came up with some proposals which kind of split the council, really. A lot of people weren't happy with those proposals. Now we're saying we're not going to look at those again until, until we don't know when. This is an indeterminate timescale. So what I would like to propose is that we bring that back forward and that we do look at those terms of reference again, but only tweaking, nothing major. Just look at sort of half a dozen issues that were the things that people were concerned about last time round, and that we do it within this committee. We don't have to have a working group, I don't think. I don't know what other people, if any other people would like to sort of come back to me on that idea.
Well, potentially unhelpfully, in the sense that there is a clear link, as what we reported, with the government's work on the national scheme of delegation and any proposed changes. The second part quite simply relates to capacity. That is, there is insufficient officer capacity in the planning service, together with democratic and legal services, to be able to bring forward that timescale any earlier than that.
So at the moment, it just says summer 2025. So is that going to be like June or September? I mean, can we actually get a date in there for the next meeting?
We can certainly try and do that. And I would suggest it'd be closer to September than June.
Right, thank you. I don't know whether I can hear something else.
Somebody, Councillor. Okay, who's the other line, is it? Yeah, Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. Apologies for not being able to be with you this afternoon, but I did document it well in advance. I would merely agree with what Helen Kay has just said, that I sit here month after month thinking, well, I've got this little issue I would like to discuss at the working party or a working party, and it just said all the working party items that I would like to discuss, they seem to be going down the road all the time. It might be, I think Scott said it might be September now before we have a working party. Well, this is supposed to be a live working document. Well, it's not. It's fixed in stone, and it seems to get changed once a month or once a year, or possibly even later if we can't fit it in. And I think it's quite unsatisfactory, and I do agree with Councillor Kay. Thank you, Chairman.
Barry? Okay, noted on that one. Yeah, okay. Any other comments on the work programme or any potential additions? Councillor Osborne?
Thank you, Chairman. I do agree with Councillor Kay, but I don't think we need the sort of full-on review. It's just there's a few things that really, I think, cause problems and still causing issues, particularly in elements of the scheme of delegation, particularly the very short time that members are given when planning applications, or rather the reports, come to them as to do you still want this to go to committee. They've got 2 days. I think the chair and vice chair have something like 5. So there's things like that in terms of you've only got 2 days, it's dead easy to miss it. That members are constrained, they can only refer to a planning committee or ask for that to be done within the first 28 days. But as we all know, other evidence may come forward which necessitates a call in, and members, as elected members, we should have the right to call in at any time. In fact, frankly, as it stands, parish councils have more chance of getting applications to a committee than what elected members have. So I think there are elements like that we do need to look at. Do we really need to have housing how the housing category applications come to committee. I think in South Somerset, we did put those to officer delegation only, except in very, very exceptional circumstances. Maybe that could be looked at again. And I think that's something that could be considered by this committee with some officer feedback, because most of the people here are also active on planning committees. I don't necessarily think it's rocket science. We don't need the full-on review, and you're quite right, the government may impose something else. But having seen that working paper, there's quite a few things in there that we do anyway. We already have a strategic planning committee, and at one stage we did consider more minor applications for delegation only. So, you know, I'm inclined to agree with Helen. I think we should have a look at it. Whether it's now or September, I don't think is going to make a radical amount of difference, but I do think we need to be seen. I do think we do need to have a look at it. And if we can tweak it, let's tweak it, because it will probably be 2 years before the legislation's on the statute book anyway. Remember, government bills take far longer to go through. They get more scrutiny than if it was a private member's.
Councillor Johnson.
I just wanted to check whether the item Mr. Orr raised about confidentiality will be added to the future work programme.
It's certainly going to be addressed as part of the review of the Constitution, which will be taken to the annual meeting of Council in May. That will be dealt with as part of that. Whether we can accommodate it ahead of then and report that through to this committee, we'll have to come back. Again, I think hopefully you'll forgive me apart, but hopefully members will appreciate that looking at the schedule of meetings and the amount of business that we're discussing, it is quite challenging in terms of available capacity.
Yeah,
but I think then I will formally close the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. Debate, quite robust, but good. Want to see you all on 3rd of